it's Melissa from the Oosterhout Free Library with the heroic story of women's fight for the right to vote, including here in Luzerne County. It's really bizarre, but women have only been able to vote nationwide since August 18, 1920. The women and a few men who fought for the right to vote were called suffragettes. They must have been persuasive here because one of the city newspapers published a special suffragette edition. You can see a slide here that gives the names of some of the local activists. And in 1915, Pennsylvania had a statewide referendum. The mayor of Wilkes-Barre gave a speech at a suffragette rally, and it passed in Wilkes-Barre by a few thousand votes, but was shot down nationwide. Suffragettes marched, wrote articles, gave speeches, and they had a flair for spectacle. There was at least one parade that had an elephant. They were also opposed by some women, attacked by mobs, unjustly put in jail, and mistreated there. I'm proud that I had two great-grandmothers who demonstrated for the right to vote in their Mifflin County village. Our book is called Around America to Win the Vote, Two Suffragists, a Kitten, and 10,000 Miles. So here's our story, written by Mara Ratcliffe, illustrated by Hadley Hooper, published by Candlewick Press. And see the slide for an art project after the book. On April 6, 1916, a little yellow car set out from New York City. It carried tools, spare parts, a teeny tiny typewriter, an itsy-bitsy sewing machine, one stout leather trunk bursting with useful things, two smiling women, a wee black kitten with a yellow ribbon tied around its neck. The taller woman was Nell Richardson. The smaller one was Alice Burke. Together they planned to drive all the way around America. It was a great big country, but they had a great big cause. Votes for women, Alice told reporters. Votes for women, Nell agreed. They said the typewriter and the sewing machine were all part of the plan. If anyone said women didn't have the brains to vote, then Nell would dash a poem off right then and there to prove they did. If anyone said they should cook and sew and leave running the nation, then Alice would whip up an apron while Nell gave a speech to prove they could do both. And if the two of them could circle the United States, 10,000 bumpy, muddy, unmapped miles, facing danger and adventure all alone with just each other and a kitten and their little yellow car, well, that would prove women could do anything. So off they went. That very day, they had their first adventure when a horse pulling a wagon down a narrow road refused to let them pass. Votes for women, Alice told the horse. Nell tied a Votes for Women yellow daffodil behind his ear. Then the horse stepped aside and let the little yellow car go on its way. In Philadelphia, they stood up on the seats to speak to a great city crowd. Nell didn't need to write a poem on her typewriter or sew an apron on her sewing machine. Men and women cheered. The next morning, blizzard. Nell and Alice dug into their trunk of useful things. They put on their raincoats and their rubber hats and drove through howling wind and swirling snow to Baltimore, where they arrived in time to be the guest of honor at a very fancy party. The trunk held a few useful things for parties, too. The next day, when they stopped for gas, a crowd of men clustered around the little yellow car. Alice hopped up on the seat to give her speech, but no one listened, so she told them all about the car instead. Votes for women, the men said, and waved as Alice and Nell drove away. After a quick visit to Washington, D.C., they came upon the bumpiest and muddiest road yet. The little yellow car went bump and squelch and finally got stuck. As the car sank, Nell and Alice jumped into the icy stream. They cranked and cranked the engine, but it wouldn't start. Votes for women, Nell reminded Alice cheerily. Alice grumbled, and good roads. In the trunk, they found a lantern and a blanket and a box of candy from their friends. They huddled, wet and shivering, under the blanket and ate candy till the sun came up and two strong mules appeared to pull their car out of the mud. In Virginia, Nell and Alice passed a school, and all the children ran to see the little yellow car. They hung all over it and wouldn't let the women or the kitten go until Alice promised to send them a picture postcard from someplace extremely far away. They drove into North Carolina, passing fields of singing birds and butterflies and goldenrod. And nearly fell into a hole where a bridge used to be. Next came deep puddles, sticky clay, and thick, wet sand. In South Carolina, the whole town turned out and treated them to an all-yellow brunch. In Georgia, they joined a circus parade. In Alabama, two travelers sipped tea and nibbled on stuffed dates. Everywhere they met crowds. Everywhere Nell and Alice told them, V for W. Outside Gulfport, Mississippi, the little yellow car finally found a mud puddle it couldn't cross. They sneaked the kitten into the train and smuggled it into a fine hotel in New Orleans. Then the little yellow car arrived and they were on their way. They dodged a bullet in the Rio Grande and drove through the desert of Mexico, got lost for days in Arizona, until finally they reached California, where they won a medal at the fair for driving a long way to get there, all the way across America. But they were only halfway to the finish line. They still had lots of miles and lots of adventures on the road ahead. On September 30th, 1916, a little yellow car drove into New York City. It carried mud and dust and signatures and souvenirs from all around America, two smiling and sunburned women, and a full-grown cat. They arrived to a grand welcome and a big yellow cake. The cat ate 7 slices, as reported in the next morning's Tribune. After 10,000 bumpy, muddy, unmapped miles, Nell was ready for rest. And Alice? She turned right around and crossed the country all over again. This time, she took the train.